Okay, so there's all kinds of things in this bag and you didn't get to even see them all. I'm going to take them all out again. So, we've got binoculars. Where can we put them? On something where we can see them. No, not on there. Not on your head. And we've got... Oh, fabulous. Thank you. Are we going to be able to see them up there? Some of them we might not see. Okay, we've got binoculars. And we've got, that's great. And we've got the backpack that reminded us about going on a journey. And we've got, oh, this picture of somebody that had no money in their wallet. It wouldn't be very nice to be like that, would it? So can we just make that stand there maybe? And we've got, I've got a balloon. What does a balloon remind us about? What does a balloon remind us about? We didn't pull that one out, but what do we associate balloons with? Parties. Okay. So we've got something to remind us about a party. Oh, and Pastor Ross didn't actually find everything in this bag. Let me see here. What have I got in here, boys and girls? Seeds. Oh, can anybody think of a story in the Bible that might have had something to do with seeds? Sorry? The parable of the sower. Yeah, that's a good one. Is there an Old Testament story that you might think of about seeds?
Cain.
Sorry? Cain.
Oh, he was a farmer.
Oh, he was too. Well done you. That wasn't one I thought of. Okay, I've got one more thing in here. Okay. This is my favourite. Who can see what that one is?
Pig.
Pig. Isn't he a beautiful pig?
No.
Well, actually, it's a she. I know it's a lady pig. Oh. Okay. So she's nice and clean. Does she smell?
Yeah, no.
No. Do pigs really smell?
Yeah.
Oh, they smell disgusting.
Look, if they roll around in mud.
It's not just because they roll around in mud, they just smell disgusting. Okay, do we know a story from the Old Testament that's got anything to do with pigs? Think about something from the Old Testament to do with pigs.
No. Wait, the man that was working with pigs and ate pig food.
Oh, the Prodigal Son.
Oh, that's the New Testament. Old Testament. Noah's Ark. Yeah, okay. What happened with pigs in Noah's Ark?
They climbed over.
They came on the ark. Yeah, smelly pigs on the ark. Was there as many pigs on the ark, do you think, as there were cows?
No.
No, because what do we know about pigs that's different from cows?
They're unclean.
They're unclean. And Jesus told us very clearly that we shouldn't eat those things. Okay, and there's a New Testament story. There's actually a couple of New Testament stories about pigs. What's that? Is that mine? No, that's not. That's yours. Okay, so we got to choose some stories today, didn't we? We could choose all kinds of things. And we're going to talk about choices today. One of the things that I think is the hardest thing to do is to make choices. And I think it gets worse as I get older. Maybe it's not the same for you, I don't know. But I have to make choices every single day. And it even starts before I get out of bed, Narraja. I have to decide what I'm going to put on when I get up because I don't have to wear a school uniform every day. And sometimes I don't know what to choose because it might be too hot or it might be too cold or I might have put that in the wash because I wore it yesterday. So that's my first big choice I have to make. What am I going to wear? And then as I go through the day, what am I going to cook for dinner today? Pastor Ross is going to come home at lunchtime. What am I going to make for him to eat? I don't know. And sometimes it's easy to think of something and sometimes it's really, really hard to think of something. And then it's like, I've got so many things to do today. Should I do the washing? Should I go and buy the groceries? Should I do the gardening outside because the weeds are coming up? Should I maybe do some sewing or should I actually do some more children's ministries work? And usually that's the thing that wins. So there's lots and lots of things, lots of choices to make every day. Maybe your choices aren't quite so hard, but God actually gives us the privilege of making choices. When we're growing up, those choices get harder. So you might start off with little choices as boys and girls. You might start off with choices of things like what do you want to have on your sandwiches, or what you might like to play at lunchtime. Maybe it might be whether or not you're going to obey your parents. Is it a good choice to not obey your parents?
No.
Why is that a bad choice?
Because you're silly.
Because you're silly? Kalisha, why do you think it might not be a good choice to obey your parents? I think she knows. There might be trouble, mightn't there? What's the big word we call that? Starts with consequences. And you know there's consequences for every choice we make. There's good consequences for good choices, and there's bad consequences, exactly. As we get older, we still have to make choices, and the grown-ups here have made lots of choices. As we get older, we have to think about things like what we're going to study at school, what we might like to do when we leave school, what sort of work we might like to do. And the bigger the choices, the bigger the consequences become. We might have to think about if we're going to be healthy in what we eat, or if we're going to eat lots of sugar and lots of takeaway food, if we're going to drink alcohol or do drugs or things like that that are going to make us unhealthy. They aren't good choices and they will have bad consequences. We have to think about maybe who we're going to get married to and where we're going to live. They're all really, really big choices. If we're going to stay living near where we've grown up, or if we're going to go far, far away. So the older we get, the bigger the choices and the bigger the consequences. Sometimes the thing that looks the most fun to do is not always the best choice. That's sad, isn't it? Sometimes the best choice is the thing that's hard to do or that doesn't look so much fun, like doing our homework. That's not a good fun thing to do usually, is it? But it's a good choice to do it. Okay, so today we're going to have a little time that we're going to look and learn about choices and about 3 people that all made choices. They were all very different choices, and our story time, our sermon, our talk today is going to be all around those things there. So right now we're going to watch a little video clip, okay? We got it ready, Mr.
Jesus
Magic?
also told them another story. Once a man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, Jesus also told them another story. Once a man had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, "Give me my share of the property." So the father divided the property between his 2 sons. Not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he owned and left for a foreign country, where he wasted all his money in wild living. He had spent everything when a bad famine spread through that whole land. Soon, he had nothing to eat. He went to work for a man in that country, and the man sent him out to take care of his pigs. He would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him a thing. Finally, he came to his senses and said, "My father's workers had plenty to eat, and here I am starving to death. I'll go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against God in heaven and against you. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son. Treat me like one of your workers.'" The younger son got up and started back to his father. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt sorry for him. He ran to his son and hugged and kissed him. The son said, "Father, I've sinned against God in heaven and against you. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son. But his father said to his servants, hurry and bring the best clothes and put them on him. Give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. Get the best calf and prepare it so we can eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead, but has now come back to life. He was lost and has now been found. And they began to celebrate.
You know, there's one more thing in my bag here that we didn't pull out before. Can somebody tell me what's that the picture of? People dancing? Where are they dancing? Are they? It's not a church. It's on the street. Yeah, so people having a party out on the street. Okay, I just want to put that one up there too. We've lost one of our pictures, it's just fallen on the floor. But you know what I think would be fun when we get to the end of our story? If we can put all of those things in the order that we might find them in the story. Do you think we can do that? I reckon we can. Okay. So, our story, our parable, is found in Luke chapter 15. Now I have some, they might be with you, Ross. Is there some Bible passages there? Is that the NIV ones? No, just look at the top. Thank you. Sure. Would you like to just pass those around? So we're going to look at Luke chapter 15. And the story starts way down in verse 11. Now, we didn't make these especially for you, let me tell you that. These sheets. We actually did some things with Pathfinders last week using this, and I thought, just so we've all got the same version today, we'll just pass these out and everybody's got the opportunity of being able to see a sheet perhaps. Okay, so you've heard the story. There's a little video clip. I'm going to very quickly read it again, just so you remember what it says, because we're going to just take a few minutes to have a look at the different characters in the story and see what choices they might have been making and how they made those choices. So I'm reading from an NIV, which would be the same as what you've got. Okay, Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. And so he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything to eat. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men. And so he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast, and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. But there's more. Meanwhile, The older son, remember how many brothers are there in this story? There are 2. The older son was in the field. He came near the house and heard the music and dancing, and so he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother's come home, he replied. Your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry, and he refused to go in, and so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me. Everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and he is found. Okay, so we have 3 people in this story. Can you tell me who the 3 people in the story are, boys and girls?
The dad.
There's the dad. Who else is in the story?
2 sons.
There's 2 sons. There's the older brother and there's the younger brother. Who's an oldest child? Who's the youngest child? And the rest of you are all in the middle somewhere, is that right? Okay. Except for Ross, he's the oldest, the youngest and the middle. Because there's nobody else in his family who's got no siblings. Okay, so Naraja, you're the oldest, aren't you? Are you the oldest, Kalisha?
Yes.
Are you the oldest? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes? And sweetheart, what's your name? I don't know your name.
Kirsty.
Kirsty? Are you the oldest in your family, Kirsty?
She's 13.
No, you're not the oldest child. What about the young man that helped this morning? I don't know your name either. Sorry? Miguel? Miguel? Are you the oldest or have you got an older brother or sister? You're the oldest, okay. I think it's tough being the oldest. I think it's really tough being the oldest because you have to be responsible, don't you? Yes, you have to set an example to your younger brothers and sisters. But if you're the youngest, what happens?
Copy your parents.
You copy often, yeah. But what else happens with the youngest? Spoiled, yes. What else? Get away with things, yeah. You think the younger one's made to work more?
I mean, if the older one, they are passing on the roles to the younger person, saying, you are the youngest.
I wish that worked in my family growing up. Okay, you gentlemen over here, I don't know either of you. Are you younger or older in your families? You're the oldest? What do you say?
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest, okay. Did either of you ever have the experience of the younger one getting the older one in trouble? Did you ever get your older siblings in trouble? Probably you can't remember. Did you ever get in trouble because of the younger ones? Yeah. I got in lots of trouble because of my younger sister. So we've got these 2 brothers, the younger brother and the older brother. What do you reckon? How do you reckon they got on with each other? What do you think? Come on. This is, I know you're maybe not used to talking in church, but this is a quick Bible study time. So, do you think they got on well? What do we know about the older brother? What do you know about the older brother? Boys and girls, you help us too. What do we know about that older brother? What did he do? Big voices, I can't hear you. He was in the fields, okay? So we don't know what kind of a farm that he had, that the family had, but the older brother worked on the farm. Do you think he liked working on the farm? You don't think so? He might have done, he might not have done, but he did it. So what do we know about him? If he stuck with working on the farm, whether he liked it or maybe he didn't like it, we don't know. What does that tell us about the older brother to start off with? He's responsible. Yes? What else do we know about the older brother?
The hard worker.
He would have been a hard worker. Okay. Was he respectful of his father, do you think? The older brother. So, you know, we don't know how old he is. We don't know how old the father is, but we know that the older brother is working on the farm. So do you think he's respectful of his father? I think he probably was respectful of his father. He felt that he had a responsibility to do this work. Okay, let's think about the younger brother for a moment. What do we know about the younger brother from the story? Did he like working on the farm? No? I wonder why. What do you suppose he might not have liked about working on the farm? Sorry?
His brother wasn't there to share the load.
You think his big brother wasn't there to share the load? Younger brother. What do we know about the younger brother? So, and that could have actually been the case with the older brother. He may have felt resentful because his younger brother wasn't doing his share of the work. We don't know. We are trying to understand some of what's going on in the story. Okay, let's look at the younger brother. What do we know about the younger brother? So let's go back. Do you think he liked working on the farm? No. What makes you think he didn't like working on the farm?
He had to do work.
Because when the first opportunity came for him to be here.
Okay, so what do you reckon he was doing while he was ploughing or sowing the seed, or, you know, they didn't have tractors in those days. They didn't have all of the machinery that we've got to do those great things with. What do you think he would have been doing while he was doing the work? Was his mind where his work was? Where was his mind? Sorry, where was his mind?
In the world, like a daydreaming.
He was daydreaming, exactly. And what was he daydreaming about? What do you think he was daydreaming about? The great things that could be happening out there away from the farm. Now, I pondered this and I wondered, how do you reckon he knew what great things were happening away from the farm? How did he know what was going on in a faraway place? There was no TV, there was no internet, there was no Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat. He wanted to explore, but how did he know there was something worth exploring out there? There wasn't Bibles. This is the story Jesus told. So there wasn't a Bible to read. He wanted to see what else there is. You know, the thing that I thought about this, because... Sorry?
I thought, like, the story of Adam and Eve, like, I just think because you're born with work.
So you think that Satan might have been putting ideas in his mind, and that's possible. But the thing that I thought about, if you read the story, this father, landowner, wasn't poor. How do we know he wasn't poor? Because he had servants. And where do you think the servants came from? They could have come from anywhere. Remember, Joseph was a servant in Egypt. Joseph was not an Egyptian. He'd come from the land of Canaan. And I'm thinking that maybe it could be that the younger son knew about what other things were out there because the servants came from other places. They knew that there were other things. And maybe they shared stories. Maybe. I don't know. That's just something to think about. Okay, and so what does this younger son do? He's hearing stories, he's got ideas, he's listening and he's thinking, but he doesn't have any money, so he comes up with a plan, which is... What's his plan? Come on, you've got the story in front of you. What's the plan? What does he do?
He asks for his share.
Okay. He asks for his share. You're going to die sometime, Dad. He wants money. Exactly. So, he's brave enough and he asks, tell me who here would actually go to their mother or father and say, I know you're going to die sometime and I know that you're going to give me something when you die, but can I have it now? Would you do that? That is just downright rude, is it not? And maybe, I don't know, we represent a lot of different cultures here, a lot of different cultures. In my culture, and I come from New Zealand, that would be exceptionally rude. Is there a culture here that would see that as being appropriate? No, I don't think there is. And it wasn't appropriate back then when the boy did it either. But he was so desperate to get away that he was downright rude and asked for what was his. Now, can you see, looking at the story, what did the father do? Did he smack him out for being so rude?
No.
No? What did he do?
He gave it to him. He thought about it.
Big voice.
He gave it to him.
Okay, he gave him his inheritance. Did he just give the younger son his inheritance? Read what it says in the word. Yes, he divided it and gave it to them both. And so the older son also had the means, if he wanted to say, that's it, Dad, I'm over the farm and leave. But he didn't. He apparently had a big sense of loyalty or responsibility, even if he maybe didn't like the work. Okay, so we start to learn a little bit about these boys, don't we? And the younger son, he goes for it. And where does he head straight for, Angelisha?
Big city.
The big city. What do you think he knows about the big city? What do we know about the big city? Is the big city an attractive place to be?
Lights.
Big city lights, yep. Do you think it's fun in the city? What are some of the things we can do in the city that we can't do in the country? If we lived out on a farm, would we be able to go to all the shops? Would we be heading for the cafes for something to eat? No, there's none of those on the farm. Would we be going on the big rides like they have at the showgrounds?
No.
There's none of those there. Would we be having big parties in the street? No. None of those things that look like really, really fun. This younger son, he was off to have lots of fun and live the high life, and he got there and he started to live it up. What happens, boys and girls, when we've got things that are really cool that our friends don't have, or that the other kids at school don't have? Do they want to be your friends? No? Even if you've got really cool things that they would like, they still don't want to be your friends? Sometimes when we've got cool things that other people like, they want to hang out with us. And what did this young son have that other people wanted? He had plenty of money. And so plenty of money also meant he had plenty of friends. And he really enjoyed living the good life and having lots of fun with his friends, or the people he thought were his friends. And he paid for everything until one day he went to pay, and how much was left?
No.
Absolutely nothing. And then what do you think his friends did, AJ? When he had no money left, what did his friends do? They left him. Were they friends? Your friends stick by you when you've got nothing, don't they?
Yeah.
Because that's what real friends are like. Okay. And he didn't know what he was going to do. In fact, he couldn't pay for any more food. And so he knew something about farm work, so he went and got himself a job. Now, it seems to me like this job didn't pay him anything, because although he was looking after the pigs, he was hungry, and he didn't seem to have anything to go buy food with. Maybe there was no food because there was a famine in the land. And he just looked at what the pigs were eating. Now, Ross will tell you that the pigs were eating, well, the Bible actually tells you, in one translation it explains that the pigs were eating carob pods. So we know that carob is really not people food, it's pig food. Chocolate is the real thing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes? That's right. Okay, I don't really think I would be, yes, and Ross is sure that is why he came to his senses. But really, what made him come to his senses? He had an empty belly. And when you've got an empty belly and you're a boy, what's the only thing you think about? Abel, what's all you think about when you've got a hungry belly? Yeah, food. And that was all he could think about. And the more he thought about food, the more he remembered the good stuff at home. And so he decided on his plan to go back home. Now, he said about his journey back home, and when he got there, all the way along the road, he was thinking about what he was going to say when he got to his father. So, Kalisha, you've done something wrong. You've run away so you could do what you wanted to do and didn't get sort of told anymore by mum and dad what to do. And it doesn't work out so well. You decide to go back home. And you're getting closer and closer. What are you thinking? Is it such a good idea to go back home? Do you reckon? Maybe you might be in trouble for what you did. Maybe you might not find mum waiting to give you a big hug. Oh, yeah. So I'm thinking as he's getting closer to home, he's probably getting a bit scary. Butterflies, not hunger pains in his tummy. But what's his father doing? Who can remember in the story what his father was doing? What was the dad doing in the story, AJ? Can you remember? We've got something up here that gives us a clue. What was the dad doing in the story while the younger son was away? He was looking. Do you think that he was maybe going out where he could see in the distance every day? And as soon as he caught a glimpse of that young son coming back, he ran. He ran not to give his son a good beating up, but to hug him and say, "Welcome home, I'm so glad you came." What does it tell us about the father? What does it tell us about the father?
He must have been dead when he was parting him, but he was very happy and forgiving, and he had so much love for him.
Yes. Does it hurt, those of you who have children, when our children don't do the things we ask them, defy us, go in other directions, do things that we know is going to hurt them? Does that hurt us? It really, really does, doesn't it? And you know, there are some parents that when their children turn around and come back would say, "Well, I told you so." There are some parents like that, but there are a lot of parents that will just say, "I'm so glad that you've come back. Let's start over." And that's what this father did. But what about the older brother when his younger brother came home? How excited was he about it all? He wasn't happy at all. Which makes us go back to the beginning of the story and wonder what was going on between the two boys. What do we call that thing when there's issues between brothers and sisters? Sibling rivalry. So who knows what it was about? Maybe the older brother thought the younger brother was the favourite. Maybe the older brother thought that the younger brother didn't get punished when he did stuff wrong and that wasn't fair. Maybe the father seemed like he had two sets of rules. Don't know, but that older brother was not happy. And the dad was sad because while the young son had come back home from his wandering away, there was still this big heaviness and ache in his heart because what was the older son doing, the older brother? So I don't want to come and celebrate about this. This is awful. I'm not even interested. You didn't treat me well when I was always working for you. And he went off in an angry huff. And so the father goes from having this one boy that's working for him and hasn't gone away, at least he knows he's there, and having one son completely gone and not knowing whether he's alive or dead, to having this wayward son coming back and feeling so excited, and the son that's always been there going off in a huff. That's a sad story, isn't it? But there's good stuff for us to learn in this story, really good stuff for us to learn. And I think there's a key, there's a couple of keys, and that's just what I want to look at for a second now because we're really running out of time. So when we think about this story, we need to remember that while we've pulled it apart to try and understand what the different characters might have been thinking, these people were never real people. This is essentially a story Jesus told to illustrate a point. They represent real people, but they weren't real people. And so who would the father in the story represent, do you think? The father represents God. Who do you think the older brother represents in the story? The Pharisees? Just the Pharisees?
You and I, everyone, I think.
It depends.
It depends. Okay, when Jesus told the story, he had gathered around him the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. So that was more than just the Pharisees. And all of the people that did the right things and were really unhappy about the people that Jesus hung out with. Because who did Jesus hang out with most of the time? Who did he hang out with? What was the accusation made against him? He sat with tax collectors and sinners. Exactly. So Jesus hung out with the people that weren't the people that came to church every Sabbath. They didn't pay their tithe. They didn't eat clean food only. They weren't vegans. They didn't study their Sabbath school lessons. None of those things existed, but you get my point, okay? Jesus hung out with those people that maybe thought they weren't good enough for God. Maybe were just downright over God and wanted to do all of those things that looked like much more fun. Jesus spent time with them, and they were the not goody-goodies. But when it came to the ones that were making the accusations, they were the ones that faithfully went to church every week, faithfully kept the rules, faithfully did all of the things that they knew were going to please God. Were they close to God? Do you think that the Pharisees were close to God? Why did they do all of those things? Did they do those things because they loved the Father?
I think they love the Father, but I think the focus was a bit wrong. They felt that they did.
Okay, so they thought they loved the Father. Can I suggest to you that maybe they confused loving the Father with obeying the Father for what they were going to get out of it in the end? And sometimes we can be like that. Sometimes we can be like that older brother or the Pharisees who are doing all of the right things because we think it's going to get us eternal life in the end. We're going to get a reward for doing the right things. As kids, we can do that too. We can suck up to mum and dad doing the right things, being the goody-goodies. But inside, do we feel happy about doing those things? No. And even today, in all churches, and I've known people like this, they come to church and they do all of the things that are right on the outside, but on the inside they are resentful that they aren't out there doing the things that they've had to give up. Okay? So while they are in church, in their bodies, in their minds, they aren't at all, because they actually don't have a real relationship with the Father. But they have the choice. And we have the choice. And so the younger brother represents all of those people that were out there partying, living it up, doing all kinds of things because they either didn't want to obey God, didn't know about God, figured the rules were all too hard, didn't understand about God. But as Jesus ministered to them, they came to that knowledge of Him. They came to see God in a different way. And they decided they wanted to come back, and they were welcomed back. How did that feel in the story? So think of the story again, and just imagine this in a church situation. You've got the goody-goody people that do all the right things but maybe don't have the relationship with the Father. You've got the people that have been out there doing all the wrong things. and they come to discover how much God loves them and wants them, and they fall in love with him and they come back. Sometimes we find in our churches that the two groups don't meet. Sometimes we find that there's this, I've got the Adventist heritage. I've been here a long time. I'm on the church board. You actually have to prove yourself first. You aren't related to anybody. Have you ever come across those kinds of things? Yeah. Is that how the family works? No, it's not. It's not at all. Okay, so let's go back to what we started off with about choices. Just because we can. Okay, let me scroll down all of these pages. So what does the parable mean for us here in 2020 in Port Augusta? It wasn't only a message for the Pharisees. Remember, we've already said that. And it wasn't only just a message for Christians in general. It's a message for each one of us today. We know that today God still allows us to have choices. We can choose to hang around and do all of the things that we know the Bible says because we feel a sense of responsibility, because we think that it's what God expects of us. We can be like the older brother. And we can do all of those things without a real relationship with the Father, with God. And how are we going to feel inside about it? Excited? Enthusiastic? Just not able to wait so we can share our faith with others? How are we going to feel about that? I'm suggesting that if we are like that, we are probably going to feel resentful, like that older brother, and probably end up angry. And are we going to be ultimately saved in the end? No, because it is our relationship with Jesus, our relationship with God, that determines our salvation, not whether we kept the rules. Or we can choose to be like the younger brother that wandered off and did all kinds of bad things. But he came to a place where he chose to come back. That free choice is ours. And it may be that there are some of us here today that have made decisions for God and kept the rules and maybe didn't actually have that real relationship with God in the first place, that have thought it was better out there and aren't sure whether they can come back. You may even know somebody that's like that. God gives us the choice. But as soon as that desire is in our hearts to come back to him, what is God doing? What is he doing? When that desire is there, where is he all the time? Where is he all the time? Whether we are sitting here obeying the rules, whether we are sitting here because we're in love with him, or whether we're out there, where is God? When I grew up, I was told, don't go to the picture theatre because the angels stay outside when you go inside. Excepting if there's a mission being held in the picture theatre, then it's sacred. What absolute rubbish. You can go to the picture theatre if the evangelist's there, but don't go to watch the movies. God is always with us wherever we go, and he is always looking for us. It's our choice what we do with that. And today, I want you to remember two Bible verses that I love. And boys and girls, you can think about these verses too. One of them is in Jeremiah, and Jeremiah 29 and verse 11. And it says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope in the future, or plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. God has a wonderful, wonderful dream for all of us. But whether we actually are going to reap the consequences, whether we are going to enjoy what that plan is that he has for us, is determined by whether or not we chose to get to know him, to love him, and to walk in that way. And the other verse that I want you to remember, that I want to challenge you with this morning, is a verse from Joshua chapter 24. And boys and girls, I know that you've sat a long, long time, and I thank you for being so patient. Joshua 24. While we're looking at this verse, is there anybody that thinks they can come and put these pictures in the order of which the story happened? Is there anybody that's that clever? Do you think you can do that? Where the story would have started. I'll give you a clue. It starts with the seeds. So think about the story and what happened. Seeds represent the farm. See if you can come and put them in order. Angelica, come and try. You can come and try. Okay, so we want to look at Joshua 24, verse 15. And what does this verse say? This is Joshua speaking to the people way, way back. And he said, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your forefathers or the gods of the Amorites. Choose you this day who you will serve. But as for me and my house, I will choose the Lord. And it's my prayer for you, all of you sitting here, grown-ups, and for you children, that we will all choose Jesus. We can choose our own adventure. It can be an adventure with God, and who knows where that will take us. Or it can be an adventure out in the world that may not have such good consequences. If we choose our adventure with God, we know that one day we will come to that wonderful, wonderful home and reward that He has for us, and to be with Him forever. Thank you.